Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us today for the Hydroelectric Production Incentives and Hydroelectric Efficiency Improvement. Okay, am I back?
You are.
Yeah.
Great. Zoom is quitting on me. I think that we can go to
Ryan, why don't I go ahead and take it until Lucci finishes her technical issues. All right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Section 242 Hydroelectric Production Incentives and 243 Hydro Efficiency Improvements Incentive Informational Public Webinar. So some of our logistics. So just know that this webinar is being recorded and may be posted on DOE's website or used internally. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not speak during the call or disconnect now. If you do not wish to have your image recorded, please turn off your camera and participate only by phone. If you speak during a call or use a video connection, you are presumed to consent to the recording and the use of your voice or image. So moving forward, to ask a question during the question period, please raise your hand using the Zoom function. So the purpose of this webinar is to provide clarity on the guidance application documents related to EPAct 2005, Section 242, and EPAct Section 243. So we are actually unable to comment or provide any eligibility determinations outside of reviewing a completed and submitted application during an open solicitation window. So that's very important to remember moving forward here. So we note that the guidance language that is currently out on the street supersedes anything you might hear in this webinar today. And so we encourage applicants to carefully read the guidance document. And as we said, we will hopefully help clarify any misconceptions or confusion there might be out here to the best of our ability. So the goal of this session is to provide clarity on the guidance application documents and not solicit consensus advice regarding the topics presented. If advice is rendered, we caution members to provide, based on your experience, your individual advice, information, or facts regarding this topic. It is not the objective of this session to obtain any group, position, or consensus. Rather, the Department of Energy is seeking to clarify any questions regarding the guidance application document. So to most effectively use our limited time, please refrain from passing judgment on another participant's recommendation or advice, and instead, please concentrate on your individual experience. So, Lucci, are you back?
Yes, I am back.
All right. Take it away.
Okay. Thanks. So I am Luciana Ciacci, the stakeholder engagement lead of the Hydroelectric Incentives Program. Today, we'll start off with
Okay, I'm back. Uh-oh, I'm not great either. Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
so,
back.
okay. Should we keep going, or would you like me to?
Let's give it a shot.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead. I'll
today-
stay on camera.
Thank you. Today, we have Maria Robinson with us, the Director of the Grid Deployment Office. She'll be making opening remarks. Tim Welsh, the Hydroelectric Incentives Program Manager, will provide an overview of the two incentives. We'll then move on to the public question period, where Madden Chuba and Nicholas Palso will be joining us. And we'll end with next steps and closing remarks. And Maria, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lucci, and thanks to the whole team. And we appreciate everyone's patience. The Department of Energy is doing a lot of IT upgrades over here right now, which is leading us to lots of exciting times. So we just appreciate your patience through all that. I promise we'll get to all of the good content soon. So welcome and good afternoon or good morning for the folks who are over on the West Coast. As mentioned, I'm Maria Robinson, and I'm the Director of the Grid Deployment Office here at the Department of Energy, and just wanted to welcome everyone to today's webinar with the Hydroelectric Incentives Program. As mentioned, it'll focus on guidance for two solicitations released back in March 22nd, last month already, for Section 242, the Hydroelectric Production Incentives, and Section 243, Hydroelectric Efficiency Improvement Incentives. And I'm sure, as all of you here know, the bipartisan infrastructure law provided about $200 million in funding for these two incentives. So while we're here today to discuss this particular program, I want to take a minute to provide a bit of an overview on the Grid Deployment Office for those who may not be familiar. So in addition to this work, our Generations Credits Division runs over $760 million in hydroelectric incentives, inclusive of the program we're discussing today, as well as the $6 billion civil nuclear credit and wholesale markets analysis programs. The Grid Deployment Office is also responsible for overseeing $14 billion in grid modernization funding through both competitive grants and federal financial assistance, as well as formula grants for states, tribal nations, and territories. This work also includes our Puerto Rico recovery and assistance work. Lastly, the Grid Deployment Office administers several transmission, financing, and facilitation programs available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, including about $4.5 billion in revolving fund and loan programs. If you're on this webinar today and interested in any of these other programs, please go to the Grid Deployment Office's website to learn more. One area I'd like to highlight is our Program Conductor website that includes more detailed information on the various grid and transmission financing opportunities available through GDO and the Department of Energy at large. So today we're here to talk about two of our hydroelectric incentive programs. Hydropower, of course, plays an essential role in accomplishing President Biden's ambitious climate goals of reducing US emissions at least 50% below 2005 levels by 2030 and reaching net zero emissions by 2050. Less than 3% of the nation's more than 90,000 dams currently produce power, and we recognize that the existing fleet is aging, with many existing hydro facilities requiring major upgrades. These two incentive programs will contribute to the continued growth and operational improvement of hydropower. So we thank all of you for taking part in today's session, and I will now turn it over to Tim Welch, who will provide an overview of these incentives and our solicitations. Tim.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. Welcome, everybody. As you know, hopefully know by now, I'm Tim Welch. I'm the program manager for the Hydroelectric Incentives Program in the Grid Deployment Office. I am excited to report that the Hydro Incentives Program is officially underway now with the release of these two opportunities. And it's been a long road, and I thank everyone, especially the members of the industry and other stakeholders so far, for responding to our request for information and providing other comments that we use to sort of put together all of this guidance. As I said, it's been a long road. Thank you for your patience. We basically built a program from nothing, from scratch, at the same time as our office was being built. So again, thank you for your patience, but here we are. We're underway and we're ready to go. Now, we decided to have this webinar today because unlike the draft guidance that we released for 247, the third incentive that you'll be hearing about in a few weeks, we did not release draft guidance here for 243. So we decided to have this webinar to provide an opportunity not for comment so much as clarification. So we wanted to provide that opportunity to you today. So as I said earlier, this is for clarification questions. The questions that we really won't be able to answer today are the ones about, I have this project and I want to do this and this and this. Am I eligible? We simply can't go there. You have to fill out an application. So there's no prejudgment on eligibility here. Now, quickly, I'll go through some of these provisions to just sort of set some context here. Here's our old friend 242 that we've been doing. We've been implementing since 2014, the Hydroelectric Production Incentives. So as most of you probably know, these are, again, funds for qualified hydroelectric facilities, owners and operators of hydroelectric generation facilities at existing dams. This is for payments for electricity generated and sold from dams and other water infrastructure. And we are currently now accepting applications for electricity generated and sold, not only in calendar year 21, but also in calendar year 22. So this is the first time, because of the long-term funding provided by the bipartisan infrastructure law, that we will be asking for generation records from 2 calendar years. Next. So this long-term funding that I speak about is $125 million to remain available until expended. We think, based on history, that we are fully funded for probably the next 6 to 7 years. And the infrastructure bill also raised the cap on the maximum you could get from $750K to $1 million to any facility in a calendar year. So we reissued our guidance for 242. Didn't really change all that much. The eligibility requirements are pretty much the same. This just gives you a quick overview of the 11 sections that are in the guidance. Nothing new here. There we go. Okay, so how do I apply for 242? So the deadline for applications is May 8th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, for the very first time, we will be using what's called the Exchange, which is a DOE software platform for accepting applications that was used for funding opportunity announcements for FOAs. So you may be familiar with it if you've already applied for a FOA. Lucci will say a little bit more details about this Exchange system. So please pay very close attention to that, because this is the first time we've used it for 242. But I think it'll provide a nice venue for you to send in your applications, and it will also help us collect the kinds of data that we need as well with respect to who's applied and how much they've applied for. So the guidance is available on our webpage, our hydrologic production webpage, and within Exchange itself. So stay tuned. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Next. Okay, let's move on to the new kid on the block, 243, the Hydroelectric Efficiency Improvement Incentives. So this funds capital improvements, again, at qualified facilities, owners or authorized operators of a hydroelectric generation facility at an existing dam. And this provides payments for capital improvements in facilities that are directly related to improving efficiency by at least 3%. That's one. So the bipartisan infrastructure law provided some funding for this, $75 million to remain available until expended. The other limitations, the payments under this section shouldn't exceed 30% of the capital cost of the improvement. And there's a cap of $5 million to any facility in any fiscal year. So again, here's sort of a general outline of our guidance. One thing I'd like to point out to you is the section 9 there, what are our procedures for processing applications? With the $75 million, we expect that perhaps we could be oversubscribed. When I mean oversubscribed, I mean we have more applications requesting funding than the $75 million that we have on hand. Therefore, we've come up with a scoring ranking system where we can identify the most impactful projects to be funded. Now, don't get me wrong, our goal here is to fund all projects at the amount requested. So that is our ultimate goal, and to distribute all of the funds throughout the U.S. hydropower fleet. So again, how do I apply? So the deadline for submitting applications is June 20th, again by 5 p.m. Eastern time. And again, similar to 242, we will be using the exchange system to collect applications. And so again, the guidance document that we're talking about today for 242 is available not only on our website, but also in the exchange system itself. Go ahead, Ryan. Okay, and for more on the exchange system, I'll turn it back over to Luci.
Thanks, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, the 242 and 243.
Okay, I will. I'll take it again from here. So again, as I mentioned earlier about the exchange system, all applications must be through the exchange system. Here is the website, and this is how you get to the exchange system. And the second bullet here, this is the important part. Applicant must create an account within the system. So there'll be instructions on how to set up your account. You'll have a probably user ID and a password. And so I would recommend that you start that if you intend to apply for this funding, to create your account as soon as you possibly can. Now, we do have help. So you can ask any questions in the mailbox there, infrastructure change support at hqdoe.gov, or to our hydro incentives box as well. So if you have any questions and need any help, our staff is willing and able to stand by and help you, because we realize this is new for everybody, even us. So next slide. So another important part of our guidance here is, and this has to do with exchanges, what we call the naming convention. And this really helps us, help us organize your application, because there's a lot, as you'll see from the guidance, there's a lot of extra attachments that you need to provide with your application. And the guidance gives you instructions on how the suggested file names, so we keep that consistent across all the applications, and how to what to put under different file names, so that we can easily find the attachments that are needed and that are required to be part of your application from our guidance. So please pay attention to the naming convention in there. And again, if you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask through our hydro incentives mailbox. Go ahead. Next. So, so this is looking way far ahead here. It's important to obtain a tax identification number for your qualified generation facility through the IRS. Here's the website for that IRS. And then once you've done that, you need to set up an account in the federal system for award management. known as SAM. And so if you register on sam.gov, you are assigned a UEI, a unique entity ID. Due to the high demand of UEI requests, these are taking longer than expected. So again, like Exchange, you should start your UEI and SAM registration process as soon as possible. Okay, we will take a 5-minute break here. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe fix some of our technical issues here with Lucci, but we'll be back in 5. So everybody take a quick break. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We will now get started with the question period. That will be with Tim Welsh and Madden Chuba. Madden is the 242 coordinator. We will be taking questions in the order of raised hands. Okay, we'll start with James Baumgartner.
Good morning, everybody. I am working on the S3 exchange program to file an application for one of our hydroelectric projects. And I had a question about about one of the tabs, the funding and cost tab. There's a drop-down box that indicates no funding requested, proof of concept seeding, $250,000 to $999,000. And development demonstration 1 million to 10 million. Our incentive grant is going to be less than the $250,000 range. So I'm curious which one of the drop-down menus should we use for our application for an incentive of less than $250,000?
That's a great question. And yeah, we noticed that right off the bat. And one thing I'll say is the exchange system was designed for funding opportunity announcements for FOAs. It was not designed for hydroelectric efficiency, not incentives. It was not designed for incentives. We are in the process of, hopefully, if there are any other solicitations of this type, to get it a little bit more customized towards incentives. So we realize that that is a very confusing drop-down menu. I would suggest if you can't find the right range to put no funding requested, it's probably hard for a lot of you to pick that one, but it'll be obvious to us that you are applying for an incentive. As long as you provide your what your total costs are and the 30% that you're requesting in another part of the application, you should be fine.
Okay, my second question has to deal with the calendar year 2021 and 2022 open submission period. Do we need to provide all of the elements of the incentive application for both calendar year 2021 and 2022? Or maybe refer to the documents that we're going to submit during this open enrollment period rather than submit a redundant, all-inclusive application for both calendar years?
One application is fine, but 2 years worth of data.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next, we have Brian Stone.
I had 2 quick questions. The first one, the taxpayer identification number for the specific facility. If you already, as a word investor in utility, if we already have an employer identification number, would we use that, or do we actually go and create a new taxpayer ID for each facility we apply for?
Madden, do you know the answer to that one?
Do not, but I think you do need it. We can check on that, but I think that you need a taxpayer ID. I don't think that an EIN would suffice.
Okay, and then the other question, if we have a hydroelectric facility with multiple units, so just for simplicity, if we had 10 1 megawatt turbine generator units, and we only were performing a project to improve the efficiency on one of those 10, is the 3%, does that apply to the 1 megawatt, or do we need a 3% improvement to the entire 10 megawatt capacity of the plant, of the whole facility?
We'll look at the individual unit.
Okay, okay, good. So it can't be the individual unit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because the way it's worded, it says facility, and facility is defined as everything. So that was a little
Hopefully we've clarified that in other parts of the thing, but great question.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Jeffrey Pepe.
You're on mute, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, you're on mute. Okay, we'll come back to Jeffrey. We'll go with Ceylon Harith now, for now.
Everyone. I just had a really quick question about the matching portion of this program. Do you have any details on that or anything that you'd like to share regarding the match?
I'm a little bit puzzled on what you mean by match.
Will there be a match portion required to apply, or will there not be a matching requirement?
This is an incentive, and you will be paid a rate of 1.8 cents per kilowatt hour for adjusted for inflation for your generation for those 2 years.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
All right.
Let's see if Jeffrey's mic is working. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I think he's,
Yes.
there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Apologies. So our question is, we have 3 small hydroelectric dams in Maine, and all 3 of them are currently not producing. So would that be covered under the 247 only? Or do either of these 242 or 243 cover the dams that aren't currently producing?
All I'll say, Jeffrey, is our guidance for 242 explains eligibility with respect to your situation of inoperability. So I would focus in on that area.
So from what I'm saying, it doesn't work. This is not for, it says it's only for functioning, producing dams.
It's for adding
So it's
adding capacity to existing dams.
So is 247 the one that we really need to be looking for the guidance documents on?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question with respect to eligibility. Again, 242 is an incentive for adding capacity to existing dams. 247 is available for FERC licensed projects.
Yeah, we are. We just aren't functioning. So we need the improvements.
All I will say is we're still working on our 247 guidance. I would maybe refer to the draft guidance on the street. So
It hasn't been released yet, so that's a future call, is what you're saying.
it is, but maybe you might get a clue
Okay.
from the draft guidance that is on the street.
All right.
Sorry, I
right,
couldn't
thank
be
you.
more helpful there.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. We now have David Braley.
Yes, thank you. My question concerns the definition of a qualified facility, and in particular with regard to the access to an electric grid. We're located in Alaska, which is quite different than the lower 48. We have nothing on the scale of the Eastern Interconnect, the Western Interconnect, or the Texas Interconnect. So we have very small grid systems that are islanded here in Alaska, and I wonder, you could call something like the Southeast Alaska Transmission System as a regional system, but it's minuscule in comparison to these national interconnected grids that you've listed in the definition. So can you give us any guidance? Is this worth us applying for it? If Alaska's grid is much different than the rest of the country?
So I can't answer your question about whether or not you should or should not apply. All I will say is look carefully at our definition of an inadequate electric service. We talk about being part of a grid, and we mention all those grids in the lower 48.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, we have Melissa Henshaw.
Yeah, thanks. Can you expand a little bit on the Section 243 program, what the 3% definition means? Does it mean for just a project that we would be applying for at that $5 million cap? Or is it like an overall hydro 3% efficiency?
It's per project per unit. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Jennifer King.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the payment calculation under Section 242. Considering that this is a unique year where 2 calendar years are being solicited under one application, can you clarify the $1 million statutory limit? Is that going to be for the total application applied to both years, or is the $1 million cap unique to calendar year 2021 and again unique to calendar year 2022?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure I can answer it for you at this time, but we will put our heads together on that one, and that may generate a frequently asked question. Good question. Madden, have we discussed that?
We have, we
Okay.
can put together more guidance, but the statute says calendar year, not fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look for if there's any additional info. And that's, I was wondering in putting together, because I am looking to apply for both of those calendar years. And similar to the question asked before, I didn't know if I needed, in order to make it most clear for your department, to just go ahead and submit 2 completely separate applications to keep the calendar years as distinct as possible to help clarify it in case we were to come up against a cap. Would it be more helpful for you if they were completely isolated, separate applications?
Considering that those 2 applications would be very, very redundant, I would say 1 application, but make it very clear within the application that you are flying 2 calendar years and separate your data accordingly.
Excellent, I will do. And also just to clarifying with this exchange, being that it's I'm new to that, is that a completely separate system from the Vipers system? I'm just wondering of who in our company would be the best person to register, since one group is doing the application and another group is handling the actual incentive accounting payments.
Yeah, I think we use the SAM. The Vipers is used for something different.
Okay.
Yeah, Vipers is for payments.
I'm sorry.
Vipers is for the payments, so I would say it's up to you, but it'll be 2 different processes. So having an exchange account doesn't, once you apply, then you're kind of done with exchange. The payments happen in another system.
Well, I think she's asking about Vipers, which is a different.
She answered my question. That answers my question of how.
Okay.
Of just that it doesn't, setting up a new login for exchange does not wipe out or interfere or somehow
Sorry
mess up
about that.
papers.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate the webinar. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry for confusing you. And Madden.
Okay, we have time for a couple questions. Jeff Leahy.
Thanks again to the DOE for holding this session. Very quickly, as a comment, I'll just reiterate what was just said before by Jennifer King. I think you can expect some additional frequently asked questions that will be frequent to clarify that the cap would apply to each individual calendar year. A couple of quick clarifying questions. In the application requirements, which is, I think, section 7B5, there is you have to include a FERC jurisdiction determination. I just wanted to clarify that qualifying conduit determinations for projects under the Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act of 2013, that's an acceptable document to meet that requirement.
I don't see why it would not.
Okay. And then, thank you, Tim. And then also, you talked about the requirement for metering of projects, but then also mentioned in the guidance document, that if the project isn't metered or not metered in the way that the guidance document describes, that you could submit alternative documentation. Is there any additional guidance you can provide on what that alternative documentation looks like?
Madden, do you have something on this one?
Yeah, I would say if you have a facility that has like a unique system, like there are some that are like owned by the distributor, so they're just selling directly to customers and it's all mixed in with the power. Whatever way you have of accounting for proving that that is how much you've generated, we can work with that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to 243. If there is time remaining, we will come back to 242. So for those that are still wondering about 242, if you could take your hands down. If you have a question on 243, please raise your hand.
Always remember too that you can also submit questions through the Hydro Incentives mailbox.
That's correct. We have David Brown.
Thank you. If you have a facility that has, for example, 3 generating units and one of them is down, has been down for a while because of a fire in a generator, and your efficiency would be going from 0 to 100% for that unit, does that qualify for this program, 243?
Our baseline for improvements with efficiency is the nameplate capacity. So if your unit is out of service, the nameplate capacity still stays the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mariana Tree.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to ask if you are able to apply to the different programs for one project, or if applying and receiving funding from one of the projects makes you ineligible for some of the other funding. So for example, if you apply for section 242, can you also apply for section 243 or 247?
So these are 3 incentives governed by 3 separate statutes, none of which cross-reference the other. So as long as you are eligible, you may apply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sandra Froschner.
Hi, thank you. For section 243, I see that the applications are due June 20th. Will there be an opportunity in future years, like subsequent open application openings, or is this a one-time event?
So the statute, or the bipartisan infrastructure law, provided funding of $75 million for this program available until expended. So to answer your question, we either need to have money left over on this particular offering to do one next year, or we need to receive appropriated dollars from Congress to refund the program. So it's hard to say.
Okay, thank you. On section 243, how far out can our project milestones go into the future?
So that's something, we don't have a limit there. If you are selected, we will interview you and have a meeting about what your milestones are. And I think, Sandra, there's a degree of reasonableness here. You know, if it's something that's 20 years away, probably not. I think this is just a part of a conversation. There's no limit in the statute. However, we're not interested in tying up taxpayer dollars for something that may or may not happen in the future. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then
Right.
can we submit multiple applications for different projects at the same facility?
We've hopefully opened it up enough so that we will, as I said, we'll be looking at individual units, but if there's other ways of improving efficiency other than that unit, then we will be looking at other ways in addition to that unit. Does that help?
Yes, I think so. And I think on those lines, if we have a programmatic approach to like overhauling existing units and the whole program is going to increase the facility efficiency by 10%, but less on each individual units, can we apply for the whole facility or must it be at a unit level?
Yeah, let me just say, we're starting to drift into eligibility a little bit here, Sandra. I would say, look at our guidance, put in an application, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Leon Regan.
Thank you. A two-parter here. The first, I think, to clarify on Sandra's is it multiple applications for 243 per unit per facility?
Yeah, that's a very similar question that was just asked.
Right. So rather than multiple projects, is it multiple applications for unit 1 and unit 2? Do they file individual applications for the same facility?
I'm going to punt on that particular one right now. Is this something we've discussed? Whoops, bless you. Is it something we've discussed, Nick?
Yes, I thought it was, if I'm understanding the question right, that we were looking at just one application for facility, not the actual unit within there, because you could have multiple units within a single facility.
Right, Nick, the language within the FOA states that the unit efficiency can be 3%. So improvement at a unit level, but that would beg the question as to, can you do individual unit improvements across the facility and file different applications for each one?
I don't think so. I think you can improve efficiency at all the units, but that would all fall under one application.
Copy that. And then the follow-up to that is, this is 2 years. Does the project have to be placed in service prior to submission of the application?
No.
The facility needs to be placed in service prior to November 15th, 2021.
Right. But the improvements don't need to have it be replaced into service. And
right.
And then would you be able to apply with the same project for fiscal years 22 and 23?
For a further increase?
Yes.
I think if we had the funding for it, Yep.
Copy that. That's all I have. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Karan Dwidari.
Yes, hi. I'm interested to hear more about the incentive payment cap. So currently the statute is no more than $5 million in a singular fiscal year. Does that apply for each fiscal year's cost associated with the singular capital improvement, or is that for the entire capital improvement and based on when you submitted your application?
The latter.
Okay. So it's this, okay, got that. And then second part to this question is just some clarity on the community benefits plan. Is the goal there, if applicants are submitting multiple applications for different facilities, that each community benefits plan would be unique and of its own, or does it invite the idea of overlapping work?
I think there could be some overlap there, as long as there's some sort of nexus or line drawn between the improvement project and the community benefit.
Okay. And are costs associated with your total, with the capital improvement allowed to include costs associated with community efforts?
I didn't catch the end of that. Costs associated with.
Right, so if, for example, if you're budgeting the project, should you be budgeting dollars for community efforts as part of that to meet that 30% threshold?
I think the total cost applies to the project itself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Hennessy.
Hi, thank you very much for doing this today. My question is reminiscent of a question raised about 247 in its preliminary guidance, but for 243, the work and investments made after November 15th, 2021, but 15 months or so prior to the guidance, but didn't adhere to the prevailing wage guidance. What happens then? It's tough to unring the bell with contractors and subcontractors to go back and piece together a paper trail, but there isn't any obvious waiver process in the guidance that I saw. Could you speak to how projects that had completed should address this?
Sure, Scott. All I'll say is our attorneys have spoken. We've talked to them about this particular issue, and all I will say is that the Davis-Bacon requirements do apply for expenditures after November 15, 2020. So we'd have to demonstrate that.
Okay. So okay, thank you.
Next, we have Jeff Leahy.
Hi, thanks again for doing this. I have a couple of questions based off of questions that were just asked with regards to ranking, and then a very sort of quick clarification question. So I was a little bit confused by the answer with regards to, should there only be one application for potentially multiple unit efficiency increases or other types of efficiency increases, and how those are going to be ranked? Because the ranking is based on the total amount of efficiency increase. And so, and there were examples that were provided in the guidance where you were looking at just a unit versus you were looking at other you could also look at other efficiencies and add on or have a great or meet the threshold or potentially have a higher percentage efficiency unit by adding up the individual efficiency improvement. So I don't know if there's an answer on this phone on this webinar, but I would just say I think there needs to be more guidance and clarity in the frequently asked questions section, perhaps, on how you are looking at that and what the expectations are, because I don't think it was clear, at least it wasn't to me, with regards to that there would only be one application per facility if we're thinking of the facility as the hydro project. The other quick ranking question I had was, you all are ranking these applications. Is there going to be any other outside influence that is put into who the awardees will be? For example, if it appears that there are going to be several multiple applications per single hydropower owner. If one owner happens to have, the top 5 ranked projects, will the money just go out to them, or will the DOE use discretion in terms of who they award funding to?
Jeff, we don't have any discretionary criteria outside that was outlined in the guidance.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful, Tim. And then a very quick engineering question from a person who is a non-engineer.
Speaking to a non-engineer, so this.
In section 6B6 of the document, you all require 5 years worth of data to establish baselines. And I have heard some comments, and I think you asked for the immediate previous to 5 years. And there's this question where perhaps in some situations, to get a more accurate baseline, for example, if a particular unit was running when other units of a facility was running, would get you a more accurate baseline than perhaps the last 5 years. Can people submit that kind of difference, or does it have to be the immediate previous 5 years?
Right. Rajesh, are you on by any chance? We'll clarify that one for you, Jeff. That's a good question.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, I may not have explained that very well, but it's this idea that
I got what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Michael Purdy.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Couple quick questions here. So there's appears to be a carve out, I guess, for small hydro, which has a small business constraint, for lack of a better term. And so can you help me understand, what is, I see the definition here, but like, what is a small business if you're an entity that's not for profit?
Michael, do we not define small business here?
You do, but it
okay.
So it lists out, small businesses that have limitations for for-profit entities, but it does not appear, and this could be me overreading the definition, it does not appear that there are limitations for, it appears that small business also includes munis, co-ops, tribes, etc. I just want to make sure that I'm reading the definition correctly.
We included nonprofits within small businesses. So if it's a nonprofit, according to our definition of nonprofit, it's good to go under that carve out.
Okay, and the same is for munis, co-ops, tribes?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great.
We'll clarify that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not overreading something here.
No, yeah, you're not overreading.
Okay.
You're kind of underreading, but that's not your fault.
Fair enough. Not a surprise there. And so with respect to Build America, Buy America, I recognize there's a circular on the street right now from OMB, but OMB has finished the proposed rule process for Build America, Buy America. And at least in my read of it, it's roughly similar. Under the assumption that the final rule comes out in the sort of kind of near future, does that overtake the guidance that OMB has put out?
No.
How does that work from
I don't want to use the word overtake and OMB in the same sentence.
Fair enough.
But my assumption, Michael, is that we will get guidance from OMB about how to, any retroactive activities. So
okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Thomas Hickey.
Clarification related to the earlier question that we talked about the nameplate and increasing the nameplate capacity on a unit. In the examples in the guidance, there was mention of making a capital improvement to an intake bar rack that might reduce your losses, improve the production of the plant. But that would not change a nameplate rating, I don't think.
No, but it would increase the efficiency of the unit. I was speaking to the nameplate as some sort of a guide about what.
Yeah, so if you're working on a unit, you would look at the nameplate. If you're looking at a bigger picture, it would not apply.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Kali Barksgassi. Sorry.
No worries. Hello. I just have two quick questions. First, how is DOE defining applied for in relation to the federal, state, or tribal authorizations? We're just thinking like a standard application process for agency consultations would take 3 months maybe before it would even get to FERC. And if we're applying now, we would miss the application deadline.
Yeah, we're communicating with FERC the best we can with respect to that. If you needed to file an amendment application, I would get with FERC and get that in as soon as you possibly can.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, how are you defining efficiency improvement? Just an example, can the expected increase in efficiency can we demonstrate that through greater ability to capture a wider range of flows than current equipment?
So in the guidance, we have a whole spreadsheet to help you calculate it. But in addition, we also say that if you have a different way of calculating efficiency, as long as it's certified by an engineer and it adheres to the laws of physics, we'll look at it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Drain.
Thank you. Probably a question that everybody else on the call already knows the answer to, and I kind of sound stupid, but
except me.
Is adding a whole new unit, or even just powering a currently unpowered dam considered an efficiency improvement?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think that's one we can answer at this time. I would put in an application. I'm sorry. That's
okay. Thank you.
I can say on that one.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have TJ Meadows.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Would like to better understand when we talk about the total cost of the project. Would like to get your insight on if both indirect and direct cost are included in that total cost definition, and if so, can you provide guidance around what DOE classifies as direct and indirect cost?
My initial answer is direct costs, but I turned to another member of my team, either Nick or Rajesh. What do we typically look?
It can include other things like, having to pay people to put it in. I mean, I guess it's not just the cost of the equipment for a capital improvement. It's also the cost of everything you need to do to get that installed.
Would DOE be willing to put out guidance on what direct and indirect cost is classified according to you all, or should we follow? I mean, would you want us to follow GAP? I'm just curious.
I think this is something we need to clarify. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have Sandra Froschner.
Hi, thank you. I have an outstanding Section 242 question. I don't know if I can toss that in now or if I should wait.
Sure. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. My question is around what a qualified hydroelectric facility is for Section 242. If I'm adding power to a part of an existing facility, such as like an unpowered lock, if I put power in that unpowered part of the existing facility, does that qualify as its own hydroelectric facility? And if so, should it the new power added be metered separate in order to apply for the incentive payment?
Sandra, I wish I could be more helpful to you here. All I'll say is, again, I look at our guidance. We define what an existing dam is. It's adding capacity to an existing dam, and we define that. And so I would look to see if your lock situation falls under that definition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kathy French.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time. I hope an easy question. We have an existing federal SAM account at a parent company level. Do we need to create a second account at the company that will be applying for the grant where the efficiency improvement has been made?
Madden?
We can double check on that, but I think the SAM account then determines where the payment gets made to. And so I think we can clarify, but I think that would mean that the parent company then would receive the payment. And so if that works for your accounting, that's your call, but that's basically where the money will end up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madden.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Leahy.
Thanks, Luciana. This will be very quick. A couple of quick questions. Am I reading the guidance correctly that as opposed to what we've seen under the proposed guidance for 247, that all of these payments are going to be made upon completion of the project?
That's correct.
Okay. And my last question was with regards to the filing of the application itself. In your appendix at the end, I think the only piece of it that had page limits besides sort of one-off slides or summary documents was the community benefits plan. So everything else was sort of left open with no page limitations. Is there any additional guidance? I mean, I think there, when you give people a blank slate, they sort of think, well, let's throw everything in there. So is there any sort of guidance that you can give on what your expectation is for other sections of the application? Thank you.
As long as it provides the information that we need.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Thomas St. John.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity to ask for some guidance. I just have one quick question. On page 4 of the guidance, the definition sections, the second sentence of the incentive payment definition reads, incentive payment shall not exceed the statutory limit established in 42 U.S.C. 15882B per hydroelectric facility per fiscal year and may be adjusted if appropriated funds are insufficient to make full payments to all eligible hydroelectric facilities. Can we infer that that means that proration is on the table if there's oversubscription?
I'm sorry you read it that way because we are not planning on proration.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. And we may have Rajesh able to speak. Rajesh, are you able to speak to those two questions?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I think I can talk to those questions. And I maybe need to be reminded of the second question. But I think we have very clearly said that each unit in a facility will be counted as a facility. So if you have 10 units in a facility, It depends on how you put your application in. If you put it for 10 units at the same time, it is 3% of those, the increase in those 10 units. Remember, it is increase in efficiency. So the bottom line is, what was the total nameplate capacity in the beginning? It is not additive. You cannot do 1 unit 1% and like 3 units with 1% each would not amount to a 3% increase in efficiency. And you can run the numbers per unit or per facility in the spreadsheet we have provided and find your efficiency increase that way as well. Did that answer the question?
I think we have a lot of confusion around this particular area, so I think we're going to need to provide some more examples. Rajesh.
Yeah, sure, we can. But there is an example in there with 1 unit as well as, I think, multiple units. If not, we can provide a multiple unit example as well.
Well, let's take a look at that.
What was the second question we had? Ruchi, do you remember?
I do not. I don't remember what it is. Why don't we go ahead and go to the next? There's other people waiting.
Sure.
Thank you. Next, we have Brennan Smith.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. I would refer to page 15 of the guidance, section 9, the frequently asked questions, question number 5.
What page, Brennan? What page?
Page 15.
Thanks.
I just want to clarify, because what I read under the answer to question 5 seems perhaps I can't reconcile with some of your earlier answers. All eligible capital improvements at a single facility should be included in one application. Help me understand what that means, and can you reiterate perhaps what you intend the meaning of facility to be in that sentence?
Again, this seems to be causing a lot of confusion here, and I apologize if we have not clarified this enough. We need to clarify this further.
Thank you. That'd be great. Like, have additional clarification and reconciliation of those of the text there.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, we have Daniel Kennedy.
Yes, good morning. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I'm backtrack to the section 242, if I may, for just a moment, please. If we sell direct to the power grid and it is revenue grade metered by the utility company, and this may be a specific question, but I know this has affected a large number of facilities. So, and all the electricity that was transmitted to the grid, but the invoices from the power company are showing short because they had an issue with their software. Do we submit both numbers while the matter is being resolved by the utility company, with our verifying also through our revenue, through our meters, what was transmitted to the grid, in addition to the invoices from the utility company to what they paid out on? I'm not sure another way to validate those two distinguished numbers for what was transmitted to the grid versus what was sold to the grid, while we're in the process of trying to resolve that with the utilities, which could take months.
I would say, yeah, go ahead and include all of the information, and we'll just make sure to be in contact with you. And if the utility does get back to you, you can add that information in later, but we wouldn't want that process to interfere with you potentially being able to get payments if you're eligible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Joe Schmo.
Hi, I might have had a question in regards to the $75 million cap. Are the applications approved case by case until that 75 million is fully expended? As such, the funding would be locked to those applicants, or are the applicants in like a pool, and the funding for the incentive payments is a first come, first serve based on project completion?
More the former than the latter. So we will be selecting projects for payment, and those funds will be reserved for those particular projects that we select upon demonstration that they increased efficiency by 3% or more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Anna Lampman.
Hi, yes, I have two questions. The first is, you mentioned that if we were to do our own analyses to determine that increase in efficiency, it would need to be approved by an engineer. I'm assuming you mean stamped by a professional engineer. If we were to use the provided spreadsheet, would that still be required to be stamped or approved by a professional engineer?
I believe the answer is we were only looking for the stamp, and that was the word I was looking for earlier. Thank you, Anna. If there was an alternative method used, we would prefer that you use our spreadsheet so our engineers can look at it.
Okay, makes sense. And then my last question is more of a confirmation. I just want to confirm that the Build America, Buy America requirements do not apply to for-profit organizations.
That's my understanding based on the latest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Karam Dwidari.
Hi, yes, I just have a quick question on question 11 of the FAQs on page 16 of the guidance. Says that it's based on incentive funds and applying for both 243 and 247. Curious if the $5 million applies to the total and aggregate if applicants were to apply to both programs, or it would be for each singular one. You could apply for 5 million as long as the capital improvements are separated from one another.
Would be for each. So the 30%, 5 million.
Perfect.
The 30% for 247.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Brennan Smith next.
Yeah, so I apologize, Tim. I may be thick. I still didn't understand that last answer. Can I put it this way? Is it possible for a single facility to get $10 million if it were to do as best as possible in both 243 and 247? Or
They
is
are,
it just
they are
5?
separate statutes and will be handled entirely separately.
Thank you.
The other one did not exist.
All right, thank you very much. The other point or question, and I think Jeff touched on this earlier, as you all are clarifying the whole efficiency question, if you could clarify as well how you will rank, and I mean, there's a score for each application based on its efficiency improvement, but we got apples and oranges in terms of efficiency calculations and the scope of assets to which the calculation applies. So if you could clarify how you'll get from efficiency calcs to score for ranking, that would be much appreciated as well.
So we will come out with one answer, an efficiency answer, one number, and then you can get bonus points for some of those other areas that escape me right now. And then you'll be ranked.
So it won't matter whether you're providing a multi-unit efficiency gain or a single unit efficiency gain, they still will get compared in ranking. Is that a right interpretation?
That's right. We'll come out with one number. for application.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions on 243?
Yes, I have a question, please. My name is Duncan Broach. I don't see how to raise my hand here, but is it okay if I ask a question?
We got you, Duncan.
Excellent. So listen, I put a hydro online in 1995. I'm just trying to see if it's eligible. So I'm looking here online at what's called Hydroelectric Incentives Guide, where it defines eligible projects. And under the definition of eligible projects, under small d, it states began producing hydroelectric energy ... for sale on or after October 1st, 2005. So does that mean if I put my project online prior to 2005, I'm not eligible?
I'm sorry, Duncan, we cannot answer any eligibility questions.
Oh my goodness. Why not?
I would
seems pretty straightforward here.
I would read the guidance. I would put in an application, and then we will make an eligibility determination.
It's just a simple question about the date here. And so what does it mean when it says began producing hydroelectric energy for sale on or after October 1st, 2005?
It means began producing energy on or about October 2005. It means
so if I produce before that date, I'm not eligible. All righty. Well, thanks for nothing, I guess.
Thank you. Next, we have Rob Gray.
Yes, this kind of goes back to the question about nameplate data. And as you look at the spreadsheets that were provided and the historic data that were to provide, that's flows, head, produced power. When you calculate efficiency on using those numbers, you'll end up including any degradation, say to a turbine runner due to pitting or corrosion or whatnot. So that's at that point is really not at operating necessarily at nameplate capacity. So guess I'm a little bit confused about what would the base case be if it's really the historic, what we've been doing and what the unit is performing at up to this point within the last 5 years, or if we're projecting back and saying what that unit should be if it was back in new condition.
So we'll be looking at the last 5 years, but you do get bonus points for increasing it above the original nameplate capacity.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
We're on to our last two. Daniel Kennedy. Did you still have a question?
I'm sorry, I actually did not press anything. I left hand and it didn't take it. I'm sorry.
Anna Plantman, did you have a question or is your hand still
No,
up?
I'm sorry. I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Thank you. I think that we can move on to next steps.
Okay, so here's our schedule. So we've issued the guidance and we've opened the solicitation for 242. Applications are due May 8th. We'll be looking at applications, determining eligibility. We will notify everyone of their eligibility by July, and there is an appeal period where you can appeal to the Office of Hearings and Appeals at DOE. And once all appeals have been heard, if there are any, we are targeting issuing payments in September of 2023. So for 242 or 243, again, the solicitation is open until June 20, 2023. We'll be issuing notices of eligibility in September, and then the payments, as said earlier and stated in the guidance, The payments themselves will be upon determination of completion of the project and demonstration that you've improved efficiency by 3% or more. Thank you very much. A lot of good questions. I would want to clarify one thing. So the nameplate capacity is used for bonus points, but your efficiency would be from the previous 5 years of generation. So I wanted to clarify that. Okay, so again, here's our deadlines: May 8th for 242, June 20th for 243, and again, please go into the exchange system. Here are the websites for that, and register for exchange. So try not to wait till the last minute to do your registration. Get it all set up ahead of time so that you can iteratively put your application in, hopefully, and not be up too late on May 7th or June 19th. So anyway, yeah, sign up for our Grid Deployment Office newsletter and select the hydro incentives topics within the newsletters. So thank you again very much. I hope this has been helpful. Again, we need to put our heads together and come up with some more frequently asked questions. There's a few confusion around some things like that around eligibility. So we will do that in short order to clarify some of these things so that you can begin putting together your applications. So again, thank you very much. We hope that you will apply and look forward to seeing your applications. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.